When we look at history, we realize that many of those who decided to deeply investigate the essential answers of this life went insane. Great thinkers, artists, geniuses, and philosophers who, behind their works, were searching for something greater, were trying to find explanations, but in the end, found madness. At least that's the story they tell us. Obviously, I personally didn't know any of these figures, so I'm not going to stand here and claim exactly what happened to each of them. What we have are their works, their creations, and the reports and stories that say these brilliant minds delved so deeply into existential questions and human psychology that they ended up developing mental disorders, completely isolating themselves from society, or even entering states of hallucination and paranoia. But what would really be the root cause of all this madness? Was it because they couldn't handle the dark answers they found? Could it be they couldn't handle realizing there might not be clear answers? Or, stepping back, could it be that all these stories are nothing more than exaggerated perspectives, or even deceitful attempts to show us that searching for these questions is dangerous? That challenging the order can destroy our minds? In short, ideas that they try to implant in our heads so that we stay trapped in our comfort zone, in our monotonous routines. And in this way, we don't even consider starting a search for the truth, an existential quest in this life. Maybe I went too far with that assumption. I could be exaggerating. That sounds more like a conspiracy theory or something like that, but what I have to agree with is that really, we are not encouraged to start an individual search in this life. On the contrary, we could even say that we are discouraged from following that path. But of course, have you ever imagined what would happen to social structures and institutions? If people en masse decided to seek their own answers, decided to break the rules, abandon order, and question everything that has been imposed on them since they were born, imagine the tragedy. It would be absolute chaos. Governments, religions, corporations, and all the other institutions that supposedly uphold order in society would collapse. It would be the total collapse of the system, something that the power structures could never withstand. Realize that maintaining these structures requires dominant powers to impose themselves. It's not enough to suggest order. It must be established and unquestionable, with roots so deep that the very act of questioning makes you feel guilty. This is where fear becomes an effective control tool. We fear being different or questioning, so we take the easiest paths. It often feels safest and most comfortable to avoid fears and stay in a bubble of apparent security. And so the cycle sustains itself because by maintaining order, fear is perpetuated, and by maintaining fear, order is perpetuated. We are conditioned as pieces of this puzzle from an early age. Our basic education is not aimed at teaching us to seek our own meaning in life or to explore who we are, existentially speaking. And why should we learn these things? After all, these questions are usually answered by religions, by culture, or by society in general. We don't need to go through the discomfort of finding them on our own. So to hell with these existential questions. Let's focus on what's more important, on what we've been taught to seek and value. Let's worry about our professional future, about efficiency, productivity, and how we can become unbeatable compared to the competition. We'll solve our problems this way. With this package, we guarantee everything promised as success.
I want you to deal with your problems by getting rich.
But do we have any idea why all of this is happening? We have full support to learn about the available careers, about ways to make money, about how to behave according to the rules, about how to fill out our resume and sell ourselves in the market. But now try asking, why does humanity exist? Who are we really? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Most complete their education without any idea about these questions. And amid this widespread ignorance, They still comfort us with diplomas, degrees, positions, and awards that celebrate and value those who never dared to seek answers to any of these questions.
It's the world you believe to be real, so that you don't perceive the truth.
What truth?
And far from wanting to make us feel like victims of the system or wanting to crucify the way things work. But what's important to realize is that even when we choose security, perfectly following these paths and everything that's said to be right, in the end, we have no guarantees. We see many unhappy people who believe the solution is to follow these paths and reach the top, but we also see many people who have already reached the top and are still unhappy. Even after achieving everything they want, people often feel empty, anguished, and depend on antidepressants. So what should we do? What should we believe in? Is it better to follow this path, which they show us as the path of security, which might not even be that secure? Or should we take a risk and start searching for something more, even if that might potentially drive us crazy? Wait. Is that really all life has to offer us? Isn't there any other option? Because here it seems that no matter what we choose, we'll be trapped in a maze where the exit is always crap. But maybe what this whole situation is trying to tell us is that certain issues are inevitable on our journey. At some point, they will show up. No matter how much we're immersed in routine, in daily and mundane problems, failure, disappointment, and life's adversities will inevitably lead us to reflect on a greater meaning. This reminds me of a cartoon someone showed me long ago. In it, we're introduced to a corporate man, a family father, deeply involved with his work and his mundane routine. And in the midst of his seemingly monotonous and boring routine, he decides to ask yet another one of his insignificant questions. At that moment, a Sphinx bursts in and rips off his hand, saying, "Wrong question." His wife becomes desperate and wants to take him to the hospital, but he manages to convince her that it's nothing serious and continues his routine as usual. The next day, he goes to work hiding the hand he lost so that no one bothers him. And he goes on with his life as if nothing had happened. Leaving work, he decides to ask another irrelevant question, and the Sphinx appears again shouting, "Wrong question," and now tears off a piece of his leg. But even so, he drags himself to the car and keeps up with his routine. The story continues, with his family always upset and the man stuck in his daily routine and obligations. Without seeming to care much about the situation, he keeps asking his empty, meaningless questions, and the Sphinx keeps tearing off various parts of his body. But no matter what happens, he always finds a way to adapt and go on with his mundane life. Towards the end of the comic, when there's almost nothing left of his body, he finally decides to ask, "Why the hell do I have to go to the office?" The Sphinx appears again, but this time says, "Right question. Do you want the answer?" And he, already completely disillusioned, says no. What I like about this comic is that it illustrates well the idea that at some point we will be forced to question the meaning of life. It doesn't matter how much we try to drag ourselves through routines, hiding behind daily commitments, behind the next trip, the next weekend, the next vacation, retirement. At some point, the question will come up, what does all this really mean? We're all seeking meaning, living with the awareness of our mortality, which creates a heavy existential burden. We don't know what happens after we leave, and this lack of answers, this mystery, terrifies the human mind. Each of us must find our own way to overcome this fear. Some, like in the cartoon, throw themselves into routine, staying so busy with daily life that they avoid facing uncomfortable questions. They always find a way to numb themselves, keeping their minds away from these deep questions. Others may find comfort in religion, a path that can be interesting because it offers us some ready-made answers to the unknown. What happens after we die? What is the meaning of life? Religion brings comfort, promises meaning, and offers a clear purpose. The idea of serving a higher being with the hope of eternal life in a paradise undoubtedly helps many people. And here, notice that if we go back to those men I mentioned at the beginning who ended up in madness, we'll see a clear predominance of non-religious men. And more than that, men known for their nihilism and atheism. Men who preferred to confront the harsh reality that maybe there isn't a predetermined meaning to existence. And I'm not saying that the fact they weren't religious is what triggered all of this. But what makes a lot of sense here is to think about that concept of the triad of body, mind, and spirit, where the body is our physical self, the mind, our emotions and thoughts, and the spirit what transcends the material world. In this theory, it is argued that to live in harmony, these three elements need to be balanced. If any of them shifts or is neglected, an imbalance occurs that can destabilize the whole system. I think it's idealistic to believe an ideal permanent state of harmony can be achieved. Life is full of constant changes, and maintaining balance is always a challenge. There is no final point where we arrive and stay. We are in constant motion, adaptation, and change. I'm saying this because it's very common for us to idolize these philosophers and thinkers and not realize that deep down, they're also human beings, subject to flaws and limitations, just like all of us. They weren't gods of truth, but men trying to make sense of their own lives. Their theories may actually mirror their fears, anxieties, and personal struggles. Seeking definitive truths in figures who, like us, also struggled with their own demons may be one of our greatest mistakes. After all, their philosophies may very well have been shaped by their insecurities and weaknesses. But going back, when I talk about the predominance of non-religious men, I mean that religion can serve as one of the support bases of the triad. Spiritual peace is a support, an anchor that can help prevent the mind from getting lost in the depths of doubt. For some, these anchors aren't enough. They want more. Driven by relentless curiosity, they need their own answers. They need to create their own definitions about who we are, what we are doing here, and where we are going. They need somehow to feel like the creators of their own meanings, even if their triad is not in perfect balance. This search is something they can't avoid. Ultimately, no universal rule exists. For some, this search for truth is something they can bear. For others, the weight of these questions may be too much. It all depends on how we deal with this conflict, with the balance or imbalance between body, mind, and spirit. And none of this is simple or guaranteed. Each person finds their own path, and not all paths lead us back to balance. And this is where the great dilemma we have to live with arises. Which is harder, handling curiosity from not knowing or facing the pain of reality? Is it better to live in ignorance than to be aware of our reality? The writer Dostoevsky made his opinion very clear. It's better to be unhappy knowing the worst than to be happy as a fool in paradise. For him, the truth, no matter how harsh, is still preferable to a comfortable illusion. But even so, we see that his statement makes it very clear that finding the truth won't always bring us satisfaction. Imagine, for example, finding a car on fire in the street. Your natural curiosity leads you to investigate what happened, and then you discover that behind that fire, there's a terrible story of murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Then I ask you, will this answer improve your life in any way? Most likely not. But even so, you needed to know. Curiosity was consuming you, and the pain of not knowing was much greater than the fear of discovering the truth. And this is where the danger lies, because this search for answers can quickly turn into a trap that makes us think finding them will finally give us what we seek. We hope that in the answers we'll find happiness, fulfillment, knowledge, and maybe even the ultimate meaning for our lives. But despite what we think, these things aren't that simple. The answers aren't a magic key to a fixed state of satisfaction. They don't bring definitive solutions that solve everything once and for all. And when we come across this, we often end up frustrated. Instead of questioning our frustration, we fall into another trap, believing the solution is simply more answers. We seek another promotion, more money, status, or a new relationship, but in doing so, we trap ourselves. The search for answers becomes an invisible prison, a trap that we create ourselves. By fixating on expectations and conditioning, we believe that by finding more answers, we will finally be fulfilled. In reality, they just continue the cycle of repetition and frustration. As Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We need a new outlook, a new perspective that frees us from the chains of habitual thinking. Only then, perhaps, can we escape this trap of searching, when we allow the same beliefs and past experiences that created the problem to guide us. It's as if we're tied with a rope that holds us back and keeps us from seeing beyond what we already know. Real, true knowledge only happens directly when not even a single thought stands between you and what you see. It's at this stage that you can see yourself as you really are and not as you would like to be. That's when all those notions of right and wrong, all the demands for conformity start to dissolve. They lose their meaning and stop mattering. From then on, existence becomes more fluid. Letting go of everything that binds your mind, even thoughts you once saw as essential, reveals that these ties actually prevent you from seeing reality as it truly is. Society calls anyone who breaks free from those chains crazy, labeling those who reject the comfortable prison of normality as mad. But what does being crazy mean, and who decides that? The truth is, deep down, we're all a little crazy. Allowing yourself to be crazy might just be true wisdom, which, tired of uncovering the world's shames, made the wise decision to simply let things flow, to set itself free. And, of course, that's what others will call madness. What goes against expectations will always seem insane, but that's not true madness. True madness is losing yourself, losing control of your mental abilities, giving up being the creator of your own reality. Finally, after all this nonsense, what then would be the best choice for your life? Does the truth really lead us to what I called true madness? You still expect a clear answer, but honestly, I don't know. I haven't discovered the truth of this world, and honestly, I hope I never can find it.
This is for the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, for the fish out of water, for those who see things differently. They don't like rules and have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. The only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as crazy, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. How about it?